Hey everyone, and welcome back to LeetCode Day 9, and today we're going to look at two pointers. We have currently finished arrays and hashing on our channel, and that's because we've merged one of these videos together and done all these other ones individually in their own separate video. So we're moving on to the two pointers section, where we're trying to solve problems in ON time, or the most maximal time. And let's start off with the valid palindrome question before anything else. Okay, so the valid palindrome question states that given a string S, return true if it is a palindrome, otherwise return false. A palindrome is a string that reads the same forward and backward. It is also case insensitive and ignores all non-alphanumeric characters. Alphanumeric characters consist of letters A to Z, uppercase, A to Z, lowercase, and numbers 0 to 9. So for input S equals was it a car or a cat I saw, question mark, it would output true. So since we ignore all non-alphanumeric characters and it is also case insensitive, we then don't care about the fact that this W is capital and this W is lowercase, and we don't care about the fact that this question mark isn't over here in this position as well, because it ignores all non-alphanumeric characters. Thus, that means we just have to skip this character and move on to ones that we can actually read, right? So what is the approach here? The common approach here is to look at the first index and the last index, and then check their equality. And if they're equal, that means it is a palindrome. And if they're equal all the way to the midpoint, that means they're ultimately a palindrome. But if at one point it does not equal, that means it is not a palindrome and we return false, right? There's more restrictions here, and the one restriction they add is the fact that if it's a non-alphanumeric character, we must skip. So if we're looking at I equals 0, and we're looking at j equals length of s minus 1, and j equals a non-alphanumeric character, we must decrement j so that we get to an alphanumeric character, and compare it with I, which has not been decremented or incremented. That way we can skip non-alphanumeric characters. Also, within our check, we need to make sure that both letters are at least uppercase or lowercase so that it reads the same, because when we do equality, it matters that whether or not it's the same case or not. So for example, if we were to compare W uppercase with W lowercase, that would be false. So we'd have to change it to one case so that we would get it as true, because it is case insensitive. Alright, so since we've explained the problem, let's go on to coding the solution. So like I said before, we want to get the beginning index, so we're going to name that I. We want to get the last index, which is we're going to name that j, and it's going to be len of s minus 1. Then we have to loop until I is less than j. We have to loop until I is less than j, because if they do equal, that means we have met a point where the index is equal, and there's no point in comparing something that has the same index as the other, because it would just be futile, right? So now we have a while loop that checks whether I is less than j. What do we do now? So let's look at it without looking at these restrictions of case insensitivity and non-alphanumeric characters. When do we return false? We return false only if the value at s at I does not equal the value at s at j, correct? So we can do if s at I does not equal s at j, return false. And when do we return true? We return true only if we go through all the iterations in the while loop. Okay, well, if this is all we have in the while loop, will this while loop ever stop running? No, it has to meet an end condition. That end condition is met by incrementing and decrementing I and j. So we can do this by doing I plus equals 1 and j minus equals 1. So why do we put this outside the if statement, right? So if this is not true, right, if this doesn't execute, this statement doesn't execute, that means s at I and s at j do equal, and that means we can actually move our pointers forward in the string. So we can point from W and W, point J backward to A, and I back upward to A, and then we can continue on this pattern. Okay. Now, this is just the general format we would have if you didn't have to look at case and sensitivity and ignoring non-alpha numeric characters. But let's take that into account now, because we basically have the general structure down. Let's think about non-alphanumeric characters. What would we do if we do come across a character that is non-alphanumeric? Well, it says here in the question to ignore it, right? So for example, if s at j, which is maybe this question mark here, is an alphanumeric character, is a non-alphanumeric character, what should we do? Well, it's a skip, right? So this is how we'd write that. If s at j dot is alnum, which is um, a Python function that you can use to check if a string is an alphanumeric string, then what do we do? Well, this is saying if the s at j is alphanumeric, but we want it to be non-alphanumeric, so we can put a not in front of here. So if it's not an alphanumeric character, we need to skip it. How do we skip it? We move one index back. So we move to W. So how do we do that? We do j minus equals 1. And we want to continue here because we want to loop. We don't want to go through this whole command again because it's going to mess up the order of things. We just want to continue to the while loop and check again. Now, what if the same thing happens to the ith position? We basically do the same thing, but just increment it upwards because we're not going backwards here. We're going upwards. Right? So if s I dot is alnum I plus equals 1, continue. Cool. There we have it. We have accounted for the non-alphanumeric characters, and we have skipped them and ignored them from these two lines, these two statements right here, right? Now, there's one other thing we have to do. We have to look at case and sensitivity. So, like I said before, we need to keep them both in the same case. And we can either do lower and upper, but in this case, I will do upper. And to do that, we just do dot upper on both strings. So s at I dot upper and s at j dot upper, which means that we change the string to be in uppercase, and we change this string to be uppercase, no matter if it's uppercase or not already. Okay? And again, if we go through this whole while loop with no falses, then we return true at the end. Let's run this code. And there we have it. We have an accepted solution. And let's submit it this time to check all secret cases. And there we go, it's accepted. So that's basically the problem. And I hope you understood. In terms of when you do this question in coding problems, you may have to be able to implement these helper functions. And to do that, you can just check whether or not a string value is within the range of A to Z uppercase and within the range of A to Z lowercase and within the range of 0 to 9. If they're any one of those, that means they're alphanumeric. And for the dot upper function, you can use char arithmetic to translate one string into uppercase string. So we can check how to do that here. Right, you can just search it up like that. And yeah, so we can just literally order the char and minus 32 to get an uppercase. And that, it just basically shows you how to do that. So you can learn that too, and it'll be useful to know that trick so that you can use that for interviews if the time does come where they want you to show how to translate a single string into uppercase. So there you go. I hope you understood the problem, and I'll see you for day 10 of NeetCode 150. Thanks for watching.